love. Now, I know many of you saying, what do you mean by love? Because people have so many different understandings of love. What I am talking about is not the powerless, the weak, and the anemic love. No, no, no. I'm talking about be love and implement the demands of justice. Be love and use your power to correct everything that stands against love. The urgency of now is to dig in and create the beloved community by rising up to be love. Let's go forward in this moment and bridge the divides. Let's go forward to create the beloved community. Let's go forward and rise up to be love.
The nonviolent movement for social change must be properly interpreted, as well as developing programs that will deal with the issues of today.
Dear Coretta.
Dear Coretta.
Dear phenomenal woman.
Dear mother, I can still hear your voice lifted in song. I can still see the warmth in your eyes and feel the gentle wisdom of your words.
You had a vision of the future that felt impossible to so many. But your faith, fortitude, and integrity laid the groundwork for it to become a reality.
Thank you, Mrs. Coretta.
For creating, for singing, for leading, for being.
Heal the wounded soul. There is a God.
You didn't just teach it, you lived it. You told your own story in your own words. When others spoke over you, you let your actions be a guide for those who chose to see.
You are glorious, not because you are perfect, but because life's imperfections taught you grace. Sharpen your compassion and your passions.
At this point, I feel even stronger, and I want you to know that you have my utmost support.
You stared down hate, stood firm in your beliefs,
Protected the small, prepared a place for those who were oppressed. You showed us that resistance is a discipline, integrity is a practice in empathy, and courage can be cultivated by each and every one of us.
When people decide to be free and they are united together in that effort, nothing can stop them.
You weathered storms, rebuilt from charred embers, conquered fear, and laughed a lot.
you told us that we could be anything and that our circumstances didn't define our greatness. Most of all, you taught us that our dreams matter. Dear Coretta.
Dear Coretta.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Students with King serves as the King Center's flagship engagement platform for elementary, middle, and high school students, highlighting the legacies of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Mrs. Coretta Scott King, and the impact of the 20th century American Civil Rights Movement. Our dynamic and interactive programming has reached over 1 million students worldwide. Our core learning programs introduce students to the philosophy of Kingian nonviolence, coined Nonviolence 365, and provide important lessons about how they can apply nonviolence in their immediate environments. Whether you're an educator who is looking for ways to bring the King legacy into your classroom, a student who wants to learn more about this powerful moral movement, or a parent who wants to get your child involved in character building and literacy development activities, Students with King is your one-stop shop for unique lesson plans, teaching resources, educational field trips, and other opportunities to engage with the history of the American Civil Rights Movement and its powerful leaders. We look forward to engaging with you and your students. Together we can build the next generation of compassionate, courageous, and conscientious leaders.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another great edition of Students with King, presented by the King Center right in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. I'm so excited to be with you this morning. I'm Shana Thorpe, and I have the pleasure of being your moderator for this very important discussion. And again, as many of you know, all of the ladies and gentlemen and the scholars across the world that are with us, this is Students with King. It's an interactive and engaging civil rights talk. And today's edition has one exciting guest that's going to inspire, motivate, and educate you. I promise. We have the one and only Dr. Felicia Mobley is with us, and she is a healthcare equity champion and the loving daughter of the Reverend Willie Bolden, nonviolent foot soldier and civil rights leader, very well known throughout the world. And today she's on with us, and I want to remind all of our scholars and all of our teachers and educators and community members that are witnessing this experience. This is your programming, meaning we want your questions, we want your thoughts, we want your comments, because the King Center is committed to actually making sure you're critically thinking about the issues that matter. And we can learn so much from the past, as many of us already know. So get your questions in. And also, we want to do a shout out to you. So for the scholars and for the teachers, let us know that you're watching. Let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to give a shout out, okay? We've had scholars all the way from China to California, from Utah, all over. So we want to know so we can give you a very pleasant shout out for watching us today, because that is so, so important. Well, right now, we also want to let you know that we're going to watch a very important introduction, a video that's going to tell us all about our exclusive guest. And remember, I already mentioned her name. It's Dr. Felicia Mobley. All right, we're going to learn more about her now.
Welcome to our Students with King Nonviolent Spotlight series. Today we are going to tell you about an amazing person who is helping to change the world. When you hear her awesome story, it will hopefully spark something in you to make a difference and make your community better for everybody. Our spotlight person is Mrs. Felicia Bolden Mobley. To some, Felicia Bolden Mobley is bright, innovative, and driven. To others, she's witty, dependable, and strong. To her family and friends, she is a Christian woman who loves God. Felicia is faithful and loyal, striving every day to make this world a better place. Yes, she is an Atlanta native and daughter of a civil rights veteran and minister, the late Reverend Willie M. Bolden, and retired university administrator, Dr. Georgiana Bolden. Her father was the wagon master for the 1968 mule train from Marks, Mississippi to Washington, D.C. for the Poor People's Campaign. He organized demonstrations in the Deep South where, said those who knew him, he was often beaten, sometimes while protecting others from the clubs and fists of police. Felicia enrolled in Xavier University of Louisiana, where she graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology, minor in chemistry, and honors with distinction in English. Continuing her academic pursuits, she received a master's degree in health administration from Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. She also received a PhD in health sciences from Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. Over the last 15 years, Felicia has established a successful career in healthcare administration, holding numerous positions in healthcare management to include nonprofit, academic hospital, and university sectors. Felicia's involvement in professional, public service, and volunteer organizations is equally rewarding. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the Greater Metropolitan Atlanta chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. Her personal mantra, which has guided her decisions since the age of 12, says, "If better is possible, good is not enough."
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Mobley. So excited to have you on. It is such an honor. Ladies and gentlemen, you saw the introduction right there. So excited. Dr. Mobley, how are you feeling this morning?
I am feeling well. Thank you so much. I'm always so excited to have the opportunity to share a little bit about my father and his impact in the civil rights movement, and just to be able to continue his story and educate young people of why it's so important to know your history and know where you have come from to know where you should be going in the future. So really excited to be here.
Yeah, so true, Dr. Mobley. We can learn so much from the past history. And as you know, we have students and scholars watching from all over the world. We did have a shout out from Spain. So thank you for watching. And I've got a question that I'm sure our friends in Spain would love to know. Your father, what role did he play in the civil rights movement?
Yes. So my father, I always like to tell this story, was an ordinary guy. He was a young man who was working in Savannah, Georgia, at a hotel. And at the time, Reverend Hosea Williams was coming to the city center, trying to galvanize people to want to join the civil rights movement. And it was something that he said that intrigued him just a little bit. And so from there, he had the opportunity to meet Reverend Hosea Williams and then meet Dr. King actually in a pool hall in Savannah, Georgia. And so they had a friendly game of pool. And from that point, my father became one of his employees. So my dad worked as what you call a foot soldier. As you can imagine, during the time of the civil rights movement, it was so important to ensure that the message was getting across. And so that message was that we wanted equal rights for those who were marginalized. And so the idea is that you did not want the message to get distorted because everyone was not on the same page. And so what the foot soldiers would do would go into a city in advance of Dr. King. As you know, he practiced nonviolence. And you can imagine that it probably was a little difficult for some people to understand or want to commit to that ideology. But the foot soldiers were designed to go into those cities and communities ahead of time to say, we are going to be nonviolent. We are here to support Dr. King. We're here to support the civil rights movement. And so we want to make sure that our ultimate goal, which were to get equal rights and liberties, are going to be realized. And we don't want a distraction of you doing something that isn't aligned with what Dr. King and the civil rights movement aligned with. So my father, J.T. Johnson, Reverend James Orange, and so many others, they were there to really set the stage to make sure that the cities were ready to welcome Dr. King when he arrived.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because you're really showing us what it took for things to take place. Like many of our scholars have to write essays and papers, but you've got to prepare before. And that's so key and so critical of it. Talk to us about perhaps some of the experiences and things your father saw being a foot soldier and going ahead and doing some of the groundwork before Dr. King and others came into areas.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I always was fascinated with is my dad would say, I stopped counting how many times I got arrested. And so when you had individuals who were very close to the movement, they really made a sacrifice and decided that they were going to be the ones who were going to work and serve for the greater good, to serve for their children, to serve for their grandchildren. So often they had to take a place of sacrifice to understand that this work is not easy. My father talked about being beaten, about being spit on, about people calling him out of his name, but he knew he had a bigger purpose. And so when you think about, where we are now in 2025, it's so important for young people to understand that when you want real change and you're really wanting to impact the future, it's going to be difficult. However, it's what your approach is. It's keeping your true north in mind, understanding that there's a greater good. One of the things that I can remember very distinctly that wasn't shown in the video is my father met Dr. King in 1961, but in 1964, they had organized a swim in at the Monsoon Motor Lodge in St. Augustine, Florida. And so, now I don't think twice when I check into a hotel and my children want to go swimming. You just go and you pack your bathing suit. But there was a time where you had segregated pools and African Americans were not allowed to swim in those pools. And so as a way for individuals to encourage the passing of legislation, they said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to all jump in the pool. So there were whites, there were blacks who all jumped in the pool. And so they also made sure that the Associated Press was there. So a lot of this, again, starts talking about how you plan and prepare. And so many of you have seen the images, or if you haven't, you can Google where the manager of the hotel is pouring acid into the pool because he thought that was going to get the swimmers out. But in reality, he didn't know chemistry to know that you pour acid in the base, nothing is going to happen. But it was that image that went around the world that later led to the passing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. So these were individuals who took big steps because they knew that they wanted big rewards as it related to helping helping the future realize life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Those are some very key points that should be resonating, right? That the forefathers echoed many, many years ago. I do want to give a friendly reminder. Dr. Mobley is so engaging and really teaching and sharing important experiences of the civil rights movement, telling the important experiences and life story of her father. This is your programming. We want to know your questions and your thoughts. So go ahead and get it in because we're on a limited time frame, but get your questions in now so we can address them. Okay. That is so key. And we have some questions coming in. So we're going to get to them as soon as you put them out. Okay. Because again, this is your interactive civil rights talk. And here we have a question. Thank you so much. We appreciate Miss Jaylene. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. She asked Dr. Mobley, what are some practical ways students can carry forward the work of leaders like Dr. King and your father, Reverend Boland, in their own communities? Great question. Very timely.
Great question. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Jalen. The biggest thing that I would say to encourage any young person is to be present in your community. Your community can be your school. It could be your place of worship. It could be where you live. And so one of the things that Dr. King and my father and many others in the civil rights movement, their key focus was to have better, to want better. I talk about, one of the mantras that drives me, if better is possible, good is not enough. So how can we ensure that things are better? For an example, look at what is happening in your school. And maybe there are some things that are not available for all students. I'll just use for an example, maybe you have some students who have some food insecurities. And so once if you notice that, maybe you say, I want to start a food pantry, or I want to start a club where we can do food drives to provide food for our classmates. Or maybe there are students who need additional support for their lessons in a particular area. You don't have to start with this big grand idea. You could start with something very simple and then scale it so that it meets the needs of the individuals in your area. One of the things, you think about in terms of maybe it's transportation, and you see that you have some elderly individuals who live in your community who have difficulty getting to the grocery store. You may say, we're going to figure out on ways that we can bus them or take them to the grocery store so that they can get their fruits and vegetables and then be able to come back. So that's what you can do in your individual community. I work at a large safety net hospital here in Atlanta. So a lot of the work that we do, especially in the area of health equity, is meeting people in the community. So making sure that you're removing those barriers. So as a student, you look and see what barriers are present for your classmates, for your teachers, for your friends, and then come together and just think about it. You could now, you have coffee houses and different things over throughout your communities, or go to the local library and just brainstorm. But the biggest thing that anyone has to do, that is so simple yet is so impactful, is you have to act. So just to sit around and say, oh, I wish, but not do anything about it, is what makes it very difficult. And I think what people sometimes, I'll take this time as we're waiting for more questions. Please put your questions in the chat. I love to answer them. Is that when you think about the civil rights movement, it did not end when Dr. King was assassinated. The civil rights movement, to some degree, is still going on today. And so we have to ensure that we recognize that while it was something that started at a period of time with an amazing man, that torch has continued to pass on from generation to generation. One of the things that my father did back in 1968, and if you do the math, we're in 2025, and many of these same issues are still very prevalent, is that he was the wagon master for the Poor People's Campaign, because they wanted to bring to Washington to help them understand what communities were suffering that had low economic empowerment, that had low access to health care, that had low educational opportunities. So when you start thinking about what those issues were back in 1968, and they wanted to bring them front and center, so they took a mule to travel from the poorest parts of Mississippi, Marks, Mississippi, all the way to Washington, D.C., so that they could ensure that people understood the plight of all. We're still in those areas today. We still have rural communities that don't have access to health care. We still have schools that don't have, recent books. So the fight isn't over. And it's so important that young people understand that their time is now to pick up that torch and continue to move it forward.
Wow, I love that. And it's all about pushing forward, and so much that we can learn from the past. I have to ask this, Dr. Mobley. You're speaking very fondly of your father's and your mother. You acknowledge experience.
Yes.
How much involvement did you have growing up with parents that were very active in the movement? Because that had to be a very unique experience that a lot of kids can't necessarily relate to.
It was a very unique experience. I will tell you, up until they made the Dr. King holiday a national holiday, I never had perfect attendance. And I was okay with that, because on Dr. King's birthday, my family was out to serve, whether it was serving meals, doing a community cleanup. My parents were very much big on social action. Even to my mother to this day, chairs a lot of social action work through through our sorority. And so doing voter registration drives, making sure individuals understand what their rights are and what's important. So I will say that my parents helped to shape me to be civic minded. And so I try to ensure that I lead my life with purpose. I try to ensure that my children also understand that it's better to give than to receive. And I did not really appreciate it until probably after my father's passing, to say, wow, you were really blessed to have access to an individual who was so selfless. And I would meet people all around the world who knew my dad, and I was like, oh, he was just dad to me, but he really had an impact. So it's so important that civic engagement is so important, even now more than ever. And so as young people, as young adults, I even encourage my daughter, serve in leadership positions in your school organizations. Complete volunteer and community service. It just makes you a better person. And even as I work now in the health equity space, I come to work every single day knowing that I'm making an impact in the community, and that brings me joy. So I'm able to marry my passion and my professional life together. And I realize that I'm very fortunate to do that.
Oh, awesome. What a great information that you're sharing and really sharing with more generations about the importance of the civil rights era and what so many involved had to go through and experience to allow the success of the movement. We've got more questions in, so we're certainly going to acknowledge those now. Right now, we want to thank you so much, Miss Bryant, for Good Morning from Decatur, Georgia. We appreciate all of you all watching throughout the country and the world. Also, we have a question from Miss Jones, Miss Kwanzaa Jones. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. We often hear of the men involved in the civil rights movement, Dr. Mobley. Can you talk more about how your mother supported his work? Great question.
Absolutely. And there were many women who were involved in the civil rights movement. And when you go back and you look at videos and you look at other documentation, you will see the amazing work that the women, of course, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, Dr. Bernice King, and others are continuing that work. But what I will say about my mother in particular is that she has continued to carry that torch through her civic engagement. She's a retired educator, higher ed administrator. So she served as a president of their executive council, really making sure, again, that students had the opportunity to participate in civic engagement. And so when you think about the civil rights movement, this was at a time when you think about your lunch counter sit-ins, when you think about your marches, you saw people from all walks of life. So they weren't just African American, they were white, they were Black, they were Hispanic, they were from all walks of life, all socioeconomic statuses. You had men, you had women who were very instrumental in supporting and pushing forward the work of the civil rights movement. So even when you think about prior to the civil rights movement, women have played an important role in activism. And so when you're talking about being an activist for your school, for your church, for your children, for your community, all people are able to be involved. And so when I think about my mom, who is still alive, who's at the wonderful age of 80 years old, still out there in the trenches, making sure that people are registered to vote, that they understand what their vote. My mother serves as a registrar during election season. So she's there with people greeting to make sure that they are having a pleasant voting experience. All of these things are important. So I would encourage people, figure out your point of entry in civic engagement. It might be leading voter registration drives. It might be hosting educational settings. Personally, it might be just holding your friends accountable. I have some wonderful circles of friends where we hold each other accountable. Did you vote? Are you aware? Keeping everyone up to date. So it's something that everyone can do as it relates to civic engagement, which can ensure that we are maintaining our civil rights. So great question.
Yeah, very important question. Thank you so much, everyone, for making this an interactive talk. It is your talk. Just a friendly reminder that we do ask that you share this stream with others. Text them. You can obviously cut and paste this if you're watching us from our Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Let them know that you're interacting and you're watching a very important experience because it's talking about civil rights and learning about the world history. So I know we have more questions. Thank you so much. We have someone, Miss Frederique, I think I'm pronouncing that right, from Liberia, West Africa. Thank you. Of course, this is a global platform that reaches and interacts with so many. We thank you, Miss Jaylyn from Spelman College out of Atlanta. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, the King Center is beautifully located in the heart of Atlanta. We have another question. Thank you so much, Ms. Walker. She asked, Dr. Mobley, can you expand more on why now is so important for youth to get involved in this tense current political and social climate?
Absolutely. Great question. One of the things I think why it's so critical for young people to get involved in this particular climate is when we think about the life cycle or the life experiences of our children. Many of their lived experiences are by way of their parents. And so depending upon where they work, or where their parents work or where their parents live, their purview is somewhat very limited to what they are exposed to. However, when you think about the civil rights movement and you look at the ages of the people who were involved, they were really young people. And part of that is because they realized that I have the ability, they had the flexibility, they had the drive, they had the intellect, and they had the purpose. And so as we think about where we need to be 10, 15 years from now, my purview I consider myself a young adult, but I'm really not. I can only think about so much from my lived experience. But as a younger person, you know what's coming forward. So as we think about what are some opportunities that can question or that can put some of our civil rights in jeopardy, we absolutely need young people to understand the history, to understand the past, to know what it took, because everything didn't happen. They didn't have Facebook. They didn't have Instagram. They didn't have Twitter. They didn't have X. So if we were going to meet and have a meeting at a church, they had to pass out flyers. They had to beat the pavement. They had to talk to people. And so now where the modalities of communication are a little different, and it's a lot easier to get a word out in a short amount of time, it is important that young people understand, how can we leverage the technology? How can we leverage the current climate to our advantage? Because if not, you will find yourself repeating history and not understanding why. And so you think about, for an example, we talk about health equity. And when we think about health equity, and that's the access to fair and just opportunities to health. And when we look at life expectancy and we see that it's different for different populations, this is not anything different from 1968. These were the exact issues that were being raised then. However, here we are in 2025. So now how can we, instead of repeating ourselves, what can we do to ensure that we're leaving the world a better place for our grandchildren and those beyond? So it's very important for young people to understand that they're in a prime place to be able to mark what will happen in the future.
And echoed so much by so much of the words of late great Dr. King. The time is now, right?
The time is now. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'm sure all of you that are watching from around the world, from Spain, from Liberia, we also have individuals on the West Coast of the United States watching. This is a very powerful and inspirational conversation with the one and only Dr. Felicia Mobley. Thank you, Dr. Mobley, for sharing everything that you are. Someone said, good morning from Miami, Florida. We appreciate you watching. Thank you so much there. And someone, actually, Miss Angie, said she's so proud of you, Dr. Mobley. Honored to be your friend. Great supporters there, Dr. Mobley. Remember, get your questions in. So we have got a great question. Thank you. Miss Jaylyn from Spelman is asking, how do you see Dr. King's philosophy of nonviolence influencing today's fight for healthcare equity? Great question.
Great question. Absolutely. And so when you think about the philosophy of nonviolence, it basically is saying that use your weapons of your voice, use your weapons of your vote. Don't use the weapons of your hands. And so when we think about healthcare in equity, and when we think about just in general, we have to keep into perspective that we who are the greatest of these must also care for the least of these. And you look at it from an economic perspective. And so when we think about the nonviolent approach to addressing health equity, how are you able to do that is to encourage your senators and your legislators to ensure that they are passing legislation that is supporting access to healthcare resources, is holding your healthcare organizations accountable, is making sure that you as young people are holding your parents and your grandparents and your aunties accountable to make sure that they're getting their preventive screenings. When we think about all of the statistics, right? When you hear the health statistics and you hear one community has a worse health outcome than another, you have to ask yourself, why is that? If everything else is the same, why is there higher maternal mortality among one group of people compared to another? So what is it that I need to do? So really, again, finding that voice. And what better place, especially for young people who are in high school, who are in college, who are in their communities, to be that voice, to use your platforms to make sure people are saying, for an example, make sure you go and get your mammogram. Make sure you're going to get your prostate cancer screenings. Make sure you're getting your lung cancer screenings. So those are things that you can do to help encourage at a very incremental level people to choose a better health choices, which would lead to better health outcomes. Great question.
Yeah, very great question and timely as well. Dr. Mobley, I have a question for you. You know, we have scholars watching from all over. Of course, Students with King targets elementary, middle, and high. And you know, you and I certainly remember being of school age at one point in our life. You have a lot of emotions as you grow and develop through life. And one of those emotions could be fear, the F word of fear. Speaking of the civil rights movement and your father, a well-known and brave foot soldier, I've got to ask an important question. Do you think your father was ever afraid or fearful as he faced the different challenges along with the other foot soldiers and instrumental players within the civil rights movement?
That's a really good question. And I will tell you, knowing my father, he was a very fearless person. He had that kind of bring it on, I'm ready for whatever you put in my lap type of spirit. And he definitely passed that on to me. But I also feel that what guided his ability to be fearless was his faith. And so when you have faith in your abilities, but then also faith in a higher power, you're able to walk forward. Fear can be very crippling, and you can get caught in the rabbit hole of what if this happens? What if that happens? But you have to be prepared. One of the things he used to always chuckle about is if you ever notice any pictures back in the day of those who were in the civil rights era, they would wear these overalls. And so there were these denim overalls, and in the overalls, it was like a pocket right here. And he said, you know, they went out every day expecting to go to jail. So they would make sure they had their toothbrush and their toothpaste just kind of tucked in a pocket because they knew they may spend a day or two in jail, right? And so this was just, again, another reminder of how they were prepared and willing to do what was required and what was needed for the greater good. And so when you think about fear puts a cage around you. Fear causes you not to think big. And now that we're in a global society, in a global world, it is absolutely imperative that individuals think big and not let fear hold them back, but know that there is a bigger calling on your life. And so you just have to take those steps moving forward to be able to get the results that you deserve or that you want, not just for you, but for your community as well. Because when I go to work every day, and I'm pretty sure when you go to work every day and many others, I'm not just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about how I can make an impact on my community and on those individuals that I engage with every single day.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for being transparent about fear and how some people face it different, but how you're right that don't allow it to cripple you, right? To all of our scholars watching, but push through it, Dr. Mobley. Well said. And we appreciate all that you're sharing and sharing your bravery with us as well, and your advocacy and the advocacy of your mother and father. Remember, this is your show. We've got a few more minutes and we want your questions. So make sure you're putting your questions in the chat so we can certainly highlight it and spotlight it, because you are watching Students with King. This is an interactive civil rights conversation with the one and only Dr. Felicia Mobley out of Atlanta. And she's sharing so much about her father, who was, of course, Reverend Willie Bolden, and so much that he shared as a foot soldier, okay? And remember, to all of our educators and teachers and instructors, we're going to have a QR code. We want you to utilize that QR code. You can see it right now on your screen. That is so important. And also, if you're watching us from Atlanta or a community member, we want your feedback, okay, on important conversations like this, because because the King Center will continue to platform important and engaging conversations that allow education to take place. Because remember, again, when we talk about the civil rights movement, we're talking about world history and its impact on the world. So get your questions in. You have a few more minutes to get those questions in, and we want you to do that because Dr. Mobley is here. Many times people ask themselves, if I had the opportunity to speak with an advocate, someone that has graced so many stages, what would I ask her? And you have Dr. Felicia Mobley with you right now. Dr. Mobley, I have to ask you this. Have you yourself, obviously you're an advocate, you're very passionate about healthcare, inadequacies, if you will, and equity being fair for everyone. Have you yourself ever been arrested?
No, I have never been arrested. But I will say this, back when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I had the unique opportunity to participate, and I would participate in different marches with my dad because I always wanted to tag along. But this particular time, we were in a city here in Georgia, and there was some discrimination happening in the area. And so they asked the individuals to come on behalf of the citizens. So we're marching down the city center. And so I'm about 8 years old, and we're marching. And that was my first time seeing people, old and young, in the white robes. And for a moment, it startled me. For a moment, it really made me question, wow, why do you hate me so much and you don't even know me? But that's when I realized that hate was taught. It was at that moment, as an 8-year-old, that I realized that people can teach love, which Dr. Bernice King is really big on, the beloved community, but people can also teach hate. And so I took it at that moment and at that juncture to say that I choose love. And so I try not to be a hateful person. I try not to give energy to hate because too often hate is what drives people to make reactionary decisions that are often not positive. And so when we think about how can we change continue the narrative of nonviolence, how can we continue to promote the beloved community? It's about embracing love and embracing each other's differences. Now, I'm not saying that you have to agree with everything that I say or do. You don't have to agree with everything that I believe, but we can respect each other and love each other enough to respect our differences and move forward from that perspective. So for me, I distinctly remember that experience as an 8-year-old, and it definitely had a lasting impact on my life because that was the very moment that I realized that you have two choices. It's kind of like that fork in the road, that you can choose peace, or you can choose chaos, or you can choose love, or you can choose hate. And I choose peace and I choose love. And when you do that, you'll see better opportunities for you as you move forward.
I love that. And it's about choosing, right? Choosing
Absolutely.
which emotion and what to embrace. Dr. Mobley, what a pleasure speaking with you. As we begin to wrap up, I've got to ask this a very important question to you. You're a highly educated individual yourself. And when you talked about choosing love, choosing peace, often maybe sometimes people have very limited views based off where they live or where they're from, right? And we also know also what they may be watching and witnessing may not always be objective, right? But share with us how key it is to always be on the journey of education, and not just for an 8-year-old young man that's living in San Diego, but also for the 55-year-old registered nurse that may be living in New York City. How important is it to continue to make sure that we're being educated?
Absolutely. And again, I always go back to this this statement that I learned as a 12-year-old middle school student here in Atlanta. I always like to give a shout out to the Atlanta public schools because they are who shaped and formed me into the woman that I am today. That if better is possible, good is not enough. And so if you use that kind of as your litmus, as your driver, then you say, what is it that I can do better? What is something that I can learn better? Maybe it's my finance and then understanding budgeting. Maybe it's I have a craft that I love to do, but how do I make it better and I can turn it into an entrepreneurial opportunity? Maybe I know that I need to do better with my health. So how do I research to decide what are some healthy choices and decisions I can make? You're never too old or young to learn something new. And so I even think about individuals who are older in life, and so much now is digital and online, and use this link and log into this app, that older adults had to learn how to do those things. And so similarly with young people, you have to learn how to read, you learn your math facts, you learn how to communicate. So to continuously be on that journey, education does not always have to be formal. And I will put that out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be formal. You can learn in various ways, and there are various modalities in which a person can learn. You can learn through your experiences, you can learn through your exposures, you can actively as well as passively learn, but understand that you always have to use your judgment to be able to say, is this something that's going to be for my benefit, or is this something that's going to be for my detriment? And so I encourage young people to take opportunities, volunteer at your local hospital, volunteer with a local nonprofit, maybe reach out to your teacher and say, do you need some assistance? Volunteer at your church, because what you'll realize is that there's so much work that can be done. And there's this old adage that says many hands make light work, that if you allow yourself to learn and to grow, that you will receive the benefits of that information. So never stop learning, no matter how easy or difficult it may be. It may be just saying, I want to increase my vocabulary, so I'm going to learn a new word every day. It doesn't have to be a huge step, but you always want to strive for excellence, because you know that there's greatness in each and every one of us, but we have to be willing to unlock it. And teaching and learning is one of the ways that you can do that.
Yeah. I love that. I love so comprehensive on what you shared. And the E word of exposure is so key to have a better understanding of the world. And of course, Dr. King and many others, and I'm sure including your father, a very well-known and respected foot soldier, would echo that: expose yourself to the world, different experiences and cultures. And that will help all of us to be aware that we have more probably in common than we'll ever know. Dr. Mobley, you are such a joy and such an inspiration to speak with. I know I've just been informed that we actually hit over 1,000 of individuals watching you this morning, and so worthwhile. Thank you so much for the individual, Miss Diane, who just actually said she thanks you for all that you're sharing with people. Thank you so much. Thank you, Miss Diane, for that. And she's saying that you choose love, peace, and not hate and division. Everyone that's been watching us, from our amazing scholars that are sitting in classrooms watching us from Spain, as we had a shout out from Spain and Liberia this morning, and also for the community members that may be sitting right in Atlanta or maybe sitting in Charlotte, North Carolina. We certainly thank all of you for watching and continuing to be along the journey of education. As Dr. Felicia Mobley so eloquently said, continue to expose yourself, continue to strive for greatness. Right now, we're going to have some very special announcements and some friendly reminders to mark your care, right? So key. The King Center is doing things year round. Students with King is a very important program, and they have other programs as well. So let's take a look right now from the King Center. And we want everyone to stay engaged as much as possible as well. Right now, as you can see in front of you, the King Center presents a Better Together virtual experience, the transformative power of nonviolence, a path to lasting change. We have Dr. Bernice King on with us, and also Dr. Charles Applin will be on, and Miss West. So you want to check that out. That is Monday, March 31st at 6:30 p.m. And that's going to be virtual. So for those that are watching us, of course, outside of Atlanta, of course, and in Atlanta, do it at the convenience of your home on YouTube or Facebook Live or LinkedIn, and also on X. So awesome. So mark your calendar, everyone, for that one. Also, there's a Nonviolence, a King Center initiative presents King's Last Speech, a nonviolent strategies for economic justice. Dr. Bernice King will be leading that as well, with Dr. Vanetta West will be on, and that's going to be Thursday, April the 3rd, okay, at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's going to be on YouTube, Facebook Live, X, and LinkedIn. So you want to check that out as well, okay? So many, many ways to stay involved. Also, coming up on April 15th, it's Reading Corner, right? Check it out. So guests with Dr. Jamel Steele, and the moderator will be Tyreek Wynn. So you want to check that out, April 15th at 10 a.m. And the registration is required for that one. You're going to visit thekingcenter.org. And remember, all of these programmings, all of these viewings that we're showing you are free. That's right, FREE. So you can certainly continue to learn and be inspired and be exposed, as Dr. Mobley just so eloquently pointed out, by these free events. You know, before we head out, everyone, we have to give a huge thank you for everyone watching, but we want your feedback. So please, right now, scan the QR code that you can see on your screen right in front of you. And to complete the survey, it will take you less than 1 minute, just trying to get a gauge of how you're feeling about the programming so the King Center can continue to lead the way and educate all individuals on the civil rights movement and so many other things that are going on around the world to stay up to date, right? Being informed is key. They often say knowledge is power. It is, and you've got to gain that power and that knowledge, of course, and there are free opportunities, as you just saw. But remember, right now, complete that survey. Let them know what you think so they can continue to develop programming such as this free of charge for all community members. And again, for our scholars, our young scholars that are learning as well. What a joy, what a pleasant experience. Dr. Felicia Mobley, again, if we could give her a virtual clap for all that she shared with us, it is so, so key. Right now, we are going to thank you. QR code again, don't forget that. Stay informed, mark your calendar, visit the King Center's website as well so you can continue to stay involved. And if you're watching on YouTube, you must be, if you can hear my voice, if you're watching on Facebook Live or you're on X or LinkedIn, remember, if you're visiting or someone shared the link, be sure to like or subscribe right now. Okay, like or subscribe so you can continue to get the notifications of all of the programming that's taking place. And I can assure you there's a lot of programming taking place with the King Center year round. Okay, thank you so much. And we want to thank everybody for everything that they do. Of course, we want to thank Dr. Bernice King for all that she does and leading the way, leading the organization, for supporting the youth through the many educational programs that are out there as well. Thank you, everyone. Again, stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel if you see it where it says subscribe at the top. Usually it's at the top wherever you're watching from, so you can get the notifications and stay connected to the King Center. And again, thank you for watching this very important and timely conversation, again, with healthcare advocate Dr. Felicia Mobley on Students with King, an interactive civil rights talk. Stay tuned, everyone, and thank you.
The King Center, founded by Coretta Scott King, is the official institution of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, championing and developing nonviolent leaders. In 2024, we impacted over 100,000 youth, equipped 150 interns, and trained over 2,000 leaders in nonviolent strategies. Join King 100 as we build King Center 2.0, empower 500,000 youth, and train 1 million individuals on Nonviolence 365. Join the movement at thekingcenter.org. Text MLKGIVE to 44321.